I want to welcome everybody. Let me give you just a little history of why we're doing this. And it has to do with the fact that it's proposition time. And these propositions are more confusing than any that I can remember, although I'm sure there are some. I'm Mike Thaler. I'm president of PDA-CA. And some of us, PDA-CA leaders, went to the CDP's executive board meeting a month or so ago. We had a seminar on the propositions. And I thought that's really a good thing because I'm really confused by the two that have to do with casinos. And we had a presentation on both of them. And when I left that presentation, I was more confused than when I went in. So we decided we would do is almost as a public service, we would put on a educational kind of town hall kind of thing, explaining them using facts instead of the obfuscation that you tend to hear on commercials and in social media. So my first thing I want to do is just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to go through the propositions, not necessarily in order. In fact, the order we're going to go through is more controversial ones, we'll say, to the end. Simply because if we start with them, we'll never get to the other ones. And what else? Oh, and at the end of the meeting, we will have a straw poll, which will pop up on your screen. And if you're on a computer, it'll be easy for you to vote. And if you are on a phone or something like that, it's a little more difficult, but you can vote. And if you're on a dial-up phone, sorry, you can't vote. So it's a technical thing, but this is a straw poll. It's not an endorsement meeting. I strongly recommend that you take notes during this, so that at least saying, you know, proposition 1, I think I'll vote for it. When we do the vote, you'll have the option of voting yes, voting no, or abstaining. And abstaining doesn't do anything to the arithmetic, but it does let us know that there are people that are still undecided. And we'll do that towards the end. I also recommend that when we get to the question and answer period, which will follow the presentations on all of the propositions, that you write down your question and read it. When it comes time, raise your hand and you'll be called on in order, and then read it or read something like it. And the reason why we want to do that is so that you know that it will be concise, because you will only have a minute to give your question. So on that note, I think the next thing that I need to do is introduce. Let me verify. I'm looking at my run of show kind of thing. Yeah, I've done everything. And the next thing I do want to do, though, is introduce someone I'm very excited that we have as our moderator, and that's Mimi Kennedy. If you are a PDA or PDA-CA member, you probably know of, or at least know, Mimi Kennedy. And she has been an activist since before I was an activist. I've chatted with her about her early days as an activist, and she was one of the founding members of PDA, and she is on the, I think it's advisory board of PDA. I'm sure she'll correct me when she goes. So what I'm going to do at this time is hand the meeting over to Mimi. So Mimi.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Yes, I am now on the board. I was a founding advisory board chair of PDA. It's really wonderful to know that so many people in California are huge activists, as so many of you are, And also want to hear about these propositions. I live in fear that I have signed some paper because somebody asks me if I'm against child abuse, for instance, and I signed something and I have ended up one of the qualifying signatures to get something on the ballot that I don't want there. Jeannie Brown from the League of Women Voters is, of course, it's a nonpartisan political organization, one of the oldest women's voting rights organizations in our country. She's the criminal justice chair and past president of a county chapter. She's done a lot of work, and I'm so glad you're here today, Jeannie Brown. Jeannie, she said, and we're going to have the benefit of her presentation, which I'm happy to say, I asked her, includes who's funding each of these propositions to get them on the ballot. Thank you, Jeannie.
All right, thank you. And am I unmuted? I think so. You can hear me? All right, and I was former president of the San Diego chapter, not the county, not the San Diego County chapter. But yeah, thank you for inviting me. I hope you're all familiar with the league, and we try to make sure not that just that everyone votes, but that everyone is an informed voter. And so I'm hoping to share my screen and get right into this. All right, when we're evaluating ballot propositions, what does it do? We ask ourselves, what does it do? Does it change existing law? Does it cost, and who pays for it? Who supports it? Who opposes it? What are the arguments for both sides, and who's paying to support or oppose it? This is a disclaimer. When we have the arguments for and against, we have taken those from the official voting information guide. We cannot vouch for their accuracy. They may not represent the league's viewpoint, although some do. So be sure to view these arguments in the light that they may not always represent the truth. And so these are proposed. I had meant to skip these. My new one was going to skip all of these slides. So I'm going to go right into Prop 1. All right, Prop 1 is the constitutional right to reproductive freedom. It was put on by the legislature as a constitutional amendment. It needed to be a constitutional amendment because it has to change the California Constitution. So you're all familiar with Roe v. Wade. And because of that, the California legislature voted to put this on the ballot in order to guarantee reproductive freedom in California, not just today, but depending on future California Supreme Court decisions, any other laws that could be changed. They want to put that in as strong as they could, which would be a constitutional amendment. And right now, the law says that one has the right to have an abortion, to have the right to privacy about personal reproductive decisions. But that's not in the California Constitution. This would put it in. Prop 1 would change the Constitution to enshrine current law regarding reproductive health care. That includes not only abortion, but anything to do with women's health care. I'm going blank. So there are no anticipated impacts on the state budget, except that it costs some money to put this measure on the ballot. So the official arguments are Planned Parenthood of California, the League of Women Voters of California, as you see, medical, various groups. They raised a little over $3 million to support this. Supporters say this places fundamental right to abortion and to the right to contraceptives. That's the word I was looking for. And in vitro fertilization too in the Constitution. It protects individual choices of reproductive care and the right to choose to have an abortion, keeping the decisions where they belong between a patient and the provider. So now the opposition, there's this woman who's a gynecologist, the California Catholic Conference, Interfaith-Based Coalition, and a few others. I will be kind of zooming through some of these proponents and opponents. Proposition 1, they say, is an extreme law that allows late-term abortions at taxpayer expense up to the moment of birth. even if the baby is healthy and the mother's health is not threatened. Current California law already guarantees a woman's right to choose, making this extreme and costly proposal unnecessary. So if you vote yes on Proposition 1, you favor amending the California Constitution to guarantee reproductive rights, including contraception and abortion. A no vote means you do not agree that it doesn't need to be put part of the Constitution. Okay, and this is where I would say back to Mimi.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Okay, we have an proponent to speak to us about this proposition, Claudia Powell, Senior Public Affairs Specialist with Planned Parenthood. God bless it. And you will be discussing the pro side with us. And 5 minutes, Claudia, is what I'm going to be clocking. And, that's a maximum. Nobody's going to cut off your head. Thank you. To you, Claudia.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. The reality is that, we know we live in California. There is this state is
Is she muted?
Yeah, I can't hear anymore.
Yes.
Claudia, did you by mistake get muted?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm going to start your time over. Yeah.
No problem.
Great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with all of you this evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My name is Claudia Powell. I am with Planned Parenthood Advocacy Project, Los Angeles County. We are grateful to be living in California, a state that, has protect reproductive health services for all people that need it. But with the Supreme Court decision to strike Roe versus Wade, many states across the country will limit the throughout abortions access, making getting more care about political agenda and sterile less scientific facts. This November, we have the opportunity to send a message to the rest of the world with Proposition 1. In California, we work to ensure that abortion are legal and accessible, that are important decisions in the healthcare are left to the families and providers, to the woman, to the people that can get pregnant. And yes, vote means that we will add the right to abortion directly into the California state constitution that provide people can continue to have the power to control their own bodies and personal decisions. We know that as a woman, we have the power to make our own decisions, and we don't need the politicians to do anything to tell us anything about our bodies. We want to make sure that women still have the chance to get reproductive health services in California, and this just on Proposition 1 will do that. We want to make sure that everyone in California have access to their own reproductive health, and we're sure that women and people that can can get pregnant will be able to make their own decisions. Thank you.
We're going to have Q&A at the end, and this is wonderfully efficient. I think we're going to have a lot of time, so this is great. Jeannie, I am going to go back to you for the discussion of, I believe we are coming up now on Proposition 28.
Okay. Yes, so I found it.
Okay.
There's my cute one. All right. So Prop 28. This provides additional funding for arts and music education in public schools. It's an initiative statute. In other words, it's a law. It's not a constitutional amendment. How it got on the ballot, if you remember, in 1988, Prop 98 required the state to set aside about 40% of its revenue to fund public schools every year. There is currently no guaranteed source of annual funding for arts and crafts from K through 12. So that's what this would do. Prop 28 would increase the funding for arts and music education. The amount would be at least 1% of the total Prop 98 funding received by schools the prior year. However, this does not take money away from that 40%. This would be in addition to it. It would increase the state expenditures on education by about $1 billion per year over and above existing Prop 98 constitutional requirements. That would be about less than 0.5% of the state's total general fund. We've got a big state, a big budget. So these are the supporters. You could imagine the PTA and so on, the California Democratic Party. The amount raised so far is around $8 million. Supporters say barely 1 in 5 California public schools have a full-time arts or music program. This would provide every student from PK to 12 for public school would have access to arts and music education without raising taxes. It protects existing education funding. As I said, it wouldn't take away the 40%. And it also includes strict accountability and transparency. There is no organized opposition to this proposition. So a yes vote means you approve of this proposed statute to provide additional funding for arts and music education in California public schools. A no vote means you would want it to stay the same. And now back to Mimi. And I'll stop sharing.
Oh, man, it's good news that there's no organized opposition. I'm going to introduce Ann Crosby. I can't look at this gallery and see where we are, but she is a child advocate and chair of the California Democratic Party Children's Caucus. She spent 25 years in the Bay Area. She served as a community college trustee. She was on Fremont's Board of Education, and she has recently moved back to San Diego County. Wherever you are, Anne, welcome.
Thank you. In 1988, in response to continuous underfunding of California schools, voters passed Prop 98 to establish what was meant to be a minimum guarantee in school funding. What was meant to be the floor quickly became the ceiling and has made it necessary for voters to revisit school funding once again. While our California education system plummeted to the bottom in pure pupil spending in the United States, programs like arts and music were stripped out of the curriculum in order to maintain academics, as if arts programs were extras. Only our wealthiest school districts found a way to supplement funding to maintain these programs at the same time, creating an unequal education system of the haves and have-nots. Are these arts programs even necessary? I mean, how many artists do we need, right? Art programs aren't about creating artists. Art programs are about the way we reflect and create our society. It is a way for children to see how they fit into that society and reflect upon who they are. Art and music programs help children navigate the rapid brain development that comes with being a child. Without these programs, we are seeing a crisis in our children's social emotional development that isn't just born out of the pandemic. Our students were in crisis well before the pandemic even hit. A 2015 study by the head of the St. Louis School of Medicine found that stress levels at one California high school were worse than what was suffered by his medical students. About 60% of students suffered depression and 80% suffered anxiety. According to the current California arts standard in pre-K-12 education, arts education boosts school attendance, academic achievement, college attendance rates, improves school climate, and promotes higher self-esteem and social emotional development. Our recognition of the need for the arts in school isn't new. Numerous studies of the impacts of art and music show that these programs improve cognitive development, spatial reasoning, reading comprehension, self-confidence, and academic achievement. Not having these programs is in our most impoverished schools widen the divide between the wealthy and the poor. According to the California Education Code, the adopted course of study in grades 1 to 6 inclusive shall include instruction in visual and performing arts, including dance, music, theater, and visual arts, and grades 7 to 12 inclusive shall include courses in visual and performing arts, including dance, music, theater, and visual arts. Not may, but shall. But currently only 1 in 5 K-12 schools in California has an art or music program. By raising the education funding floor and budgeting for the programs that are already supposed to be in our schools, we will finally be addressing student need. So we know there is a need, and we know there is a requirement that isn't being followed. How will Prop 28 address this gap, and how will it be funded? Funds will be allocated based on a formula, and as a condition of receipt of funds, schools must provide arts education. Schools with 500 or more students must use 80% of the funding to employ certificate or classified employees to provide arts education. Can our budget afford these programs? I would argue a better question would be, can our economy afford to not budget for these programs? Our California economy is built on creativity and innovation, yet we have stripped the arts out of our educational system. Art and music is essential if we are to continue to be on the forefront of creative problem solving and remain robust. How can we create an inclusive, growing job market when we undereducate our part of our society? How long can we even maintain the status quo if we aren't backfilling the pipeline of future innovators? Our students are learning what and how, but not why, and not what if. For the children of California and for the economy of California, I'm voting yes on Prop 28. I hope you will join me by asking, what if? Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. And it really was. I was speaking to Jeannie later. She was a math and science teacher. I know that dance and music relates actually to mathematics in the same way that crawling for a baby relates to reading and dyslexia. And so anybody who says artsy fartsy, which they tend to do, can just, can meet those math and science teachers and say, I don't think so. Thank you. Okay, I'm timing myself now. That was it. Everybody's been under. Jeannie, I'm going to bring you back, and thank you very much. We're now going to discuss Prop 29.
All right. Thank you. And so Prop 29 requires on-site licensed medical professionals at kidney dialysis clinics and establishes other state requirements. This was a citizens initiative statute that was forwarded by the SEIU UHWW, a union that I will explain. All right. So this is the third attempt by that Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West, to pass legislation as part of the union's effort to unionize the two largest owners of critical dialysis clinics, DaVita and Fresenius Medical Care. So in 2018, we had Prop 8, whose intent was to require dialysis clinics to issue refunds to payers, and that was rejected by 60% of the voters. In 2020, we had Prop 23 that was requiring a physician to be at all the dialysis clinics. That was rejected by 63% of the voters. So now Prop 29 differs by allowing non-physicians such as nurses or nurse practitioners as on-site telehealth alternatives and requiring ownership transparency reports. The fiscal bottom line, the California Legislative Analyst Office estimates that the cost to the California state government could run into tens of millions of dollars annually. If the government entities negotiate higher payment rates, and in addition, patients need to go to more costly settings like hospitals due to there being fewer CDCs, then healthcare costs could go up for state and local governments by the low tens of millions of dollars annually. So the supporters, and we have a list of basically dialysis patients, and they have raised almost $8 million to support. The supporters say the dialysis patients deserve protection under the law and it would help ensure they receive safe treatment in the clinics under the care of a doctor or a highly trained clinician in case of emergencies, without risk of infection and without discrimination. The opposition, again, are a group of dialysis clinic patients and Nurses Association. The current amount raised is over $36 million. The opponents say, join the dialysis patients and the American Nurses Association, that this is another dangerous dialysis proposition. It would shut down dialysis clinics and threaten the lives of 80,000 California patients who need dialysis to survive. California voters have overwhelmingly rejected this twice. Stop yet another dangerous proposition. So a yes vote means that chronic dialysis centers in California would need to increase staffing and reporting to the California Department of Health, Public Health. A no vote means things would remain as they are now, and California would primarily rely on federal regulations as the basis for its dialysis center licensing program. And we should go back to Mimi. I must have missed that one.
Wow. Okay, I cannot wait to hear about this. I have a cousin doing dialysis 3 times a week in Florida. So I really need to hear from Dr. Bill and Nurse Judy, Dr. Bill Honigman and Nurse Judy Rice. Dr. Bill, without whom there would be no Progressive Democrats of America, and who I think is, with Nurse Judy, responsible for an enormous amount of, albeit incremental, but an enormous amount of progress that we have made in public health and towards a single payer Medicare for all system. So I want to thank them. He was an emergency room physician when he started with PDA, and I used to say, Dr. Bill, it's a constitutional emergency, and he has now devoted himself full time to this emergency. And Nurse Judy is a healer, and she's a healer now, and she has told me that she wishes that she had more acting skills, but I think we're going to see that she's doing just fine. Anyway, thank you. And whoever wants to speak first, go ahead. I gave you each 5 minutes.
Should I go?
You go
Judy?
first.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Well, thanks so much, Mimi and PDA-CA for sponsoring this forum. I am a retired emergency room physician, and so never been a member of the American Medical Association or the California Medical Association. That only people are shocked when they hear that only 15%, 15% of practicing physicians belong to the AMA, and proportionally in California as well. So the rest of us, the 85% of us, they don't speak for us. So I'm going to address this. My support for Prop 29 is based on 3 things: professional, personal, and political. And I am a political junkie, so thank you for bearing with me on that and supporting me, Mimi and others. But professionally, let me just say dialysis is a serious procedure. It involves what's known as an arteriovenous shunt. Most people have in their arm. If you feel their pulse there, it kind of buzzes, and it's almost kind of scary. You should be scared because a rupture of that arteriovenous shunt is a life-threatening condition. This, and among other things in operating a dialysis unit, put the staff there at incredible risk. And for that, you need trained professionals on site. So that is a decision that's being made from a business bottom line point of view instead of professional. So the personal is that if I were a dialysis patient on that machine, would I not want a trained, licensed, certified professional in the room? You bet I would. So that's the personal. And frankly, the political is, this is now and always has been resisted, meaning the opposition to having a trained professional in the room always comes from those monetary proprietary interests that are trying to keep things the way they are. When we have Medicare for all, this will all be covered, taken care of, and will save money and save lives in the process. Thanks. Turn it over to Judy.
Okay. 80% of, well, for the first 30 months of care, a person with private insurance is covered. After those 30 months, then they're all Medicare. And then only 20% coverage, the health insurance will come in that way. The less talked about parts of this provision are having to post and having the patients understand who owns the facility. What doctors do, anything more than 5%, they have to know who owns them. And one of the groups is actually a joint venture between the entity and nephrologists. DaVita has been around probably the longest, and Dr. Bill and I probably know them the best. But the Frisia, whatever, that middle one, actually has more money coming in because they make dialysis equipment. Also, in 2019, Trump signed a bill that basically is going to make more of this in-home care. So this German hybrid American company is going to be able to make even more. And according to the documentation I'm able to find, they're the ones that have always had more income than even DaVita in terms of gross things. The other thing is that they have to notify the state of infections. These are not ERs. They don't have to take everybody that comes to their door. If you don't have insurance, blah, 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 blah. This also ensures that they can't discriminate on the kinds of insurance you have, even though you're going through your doctor. But what happens if you have an accident or infection, you wind up going to the ER and becomes part of the statistics for the hospital. So the freestanding dialysis units don't look so bad because they get rid of their problem children to the ER. Okay. And we have no staffing ratios in California. There's only 10 states that do. And having worked under staffing ratios and how people play with them, they can play with them. So, but, oh, the closing, that's the other thing. Right now, they don't have to notify the state if they're closing. With this bill, they have to notify the state that they're closing. That gives everybody time to figure out whether they're closing because they just want to up their thing, because they make more money by having a new facility than acquiring old facilities. So they can talk about patients losing access, which could be, but they may be going to be losing it anyway because of in-home, which kind of scares me, as Dr. Bill was talking about, having patients at home on their home dialysis unit. That scares me even more. Peritoneal dialysis is okay, but hemodialysis, nada. No. So I'm shut up.
We don't want you to shut up particularly. You had some more time. Is that really the end of what you want to say? Yeah, you're muted now, so would unmute if you want to. No, you're okay?
I'm okay because I can probably hopefully.
Well, the Q&A, I'm
yeah.
sure, will be rich. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Dr. Bill and Nurse Judy. All right, Jeannie, I'm going to throw it back to you for Proposition 30.
All right, here's Proposition 30. So this provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing the tax on personal income over $2 million. This is a citizens initiative, but it was forwarded by businesses and environmental groups. So how it got on the ballot is, we all know that state law requires California to reduce its greenhouse gases, emissions to 40% below the 1990 levels. And we have to do that by 2030. And it also requires that ride-sharing companies like Lyft and Uber have 90% of their drivers using zero-emission vehicles by 2030. And that's part of the reason that Lyft is paying a lot of the money for this. In August, the California Air Resources Board issued a regulation requiring 35% of new cars sold in California to be electric vehicles by 2026 and 100% of them by 2035. So with all that brought this about. So Prop 30 would tax income over $2 million to fund zero emission vehicles. That basically is electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles as they're coming on, and wildfire suppression. So if you look at the circle graph on the left, so the money that would come in, about 20% you see in the light gray is for wildlife response and prevention. About 35% would be for charging stations around the state, and about 45% would be payments to help buy new vehicles. And so those are the subsidies for new vehicles. This increase would end on January of 2043 or earlier. So there's a sunset clause on this. The fiscal bottom line is that Prop 30 would generate around $3.5 to $5 billion in revenue in most years, increasing over time. That shows how many people earn more than $2 million in our state. That could increase or decrease depending on whether the economy goes up or down, or whether millionaires move in or out of the state. So about $2.8 to $4 billion annually would be for the zero emission vehicle funding. And about $700 million to $1 billion would be annually for wildfire response. This measure could help decrease the state and local costs for wildfire suppression and prevention, though the size of the fiscal effects is difficult to predict. It may depend on the local jurisdictions may continue to use the same amount, and then this would be an addition, or they could have this in place of what they're already paying. So supporters, California State Firefighters, the Lung Association, LIFT, Coalition for Clean Air, Environmental, etc. The current amount raised is around more than $15.5 million. The supporters say that wildfires are devastating California. Prop 30 taxes only the wealthiest Californians, anyone with an annual income over $2 million to fund wildfire prevention and clearing air programs. By the way that would work is, let's say if you earn $2,100,000 this year. Okay, for that 100, it would be 6 cents for every dollar over 2 million. So the first 2 million is taxed as it is right now. Anything over, so if you earn $100 more than 2 million, 100 times 6 cents would be $6. So you would have to pay $6 in extra taxes. It funds forest management, more firefighters and equipment. It helps consumers afford zero emission vehicles. It creates statewide charging network. It has strict accountability. There are audits, penalties, and as I showed you, who is supporting it. So the opposition are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Small Business Association, as you can see, the California Teachers Association, and Governor Newsom. To answer a question that might come up, why is Governor Newsom against this? And his main thing is that he doesn't like the fact that Lyft is supporting the majority of this money. So he doesn't like one company to be able to have that much power. So the opponents say Prop 30 raises taxes by up to $90 billion for as long as 20 years. It increases costs for every Californian. Majority of the funds raised are from LIFT, and Prop 30 will severely strain our struggling electricity grid already at risk of rolling blackouts. Join taxpayers, teachers, and small businesses to reject this unnecessary tax increase. No on Prop 30. So Prop 30, a yes means you favor the increased tax and the targeted revenue for zero emission vehicle programs and wildfire response and prevention activities. A no vote means you prefer the status quo. No change would be made on personal income above $2 million. And back to Mimi.
Jeannie, thank you. I would like to clarify a point in your PowerPoint. One of the opposing things was most of, there we go, again on time. Most of the money raised would be from LIFT, it said. Did you mean for LIFT?
Yeah, they say it's somewhere between 90 and 95% of the money that was raised to support this.
Oh, from LIFT. I see. Thank you. Okay.
To support
great.
this, not,
Yes,
not
yes,
they
yes.
wouldn't be
Okay.
getting any money, no.
Okay,
But it would
thank you
help
very
their
much.
drivers.
Yeah. Okay. So Oscar Garcia is going to tell us about this, and Sandra Lowe, Oscar of the California Environmental Voters, and Sandra Lowe, who's a member of the Regional Climate Authority Board. And it says you'll be discussing Prop 30 with us. And good. This sounds like one that needs some discussion. Oscar and Sandra, I can't see you, but take your 10 minutes between you and go. Oh, hi, Sandra. There you are.
Yeah,
Okay.
you did. I'm with Oscar, and that's not I'm not with the board. I'm with Oscar.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that's okay.
She's with him. Okay. Thank you.
We'll clarify as we go along. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oscar Garcia with California Environmental Voters, Sandra Lowe, everyone. Thank you, Mimi Kennedy. Thank you for their time. And so much was covered already. So this will be a breeze when it comes down to a couple of our slides. Hoping everybody could see this, but California breathes some of the most toxic air in the world, the hazards of which are disappropriately shouldered by women, children, seniors, and low-income communities. Hosting a third of the country's wildfires, a record-breaking climate-fueled heat wave, and the meanest gas prices in the country, as we've all experienced right now. California is in desperate need of infrastructure capable of supporting clean transportation to combat climate catastrophe. Proposition 30, the Clean Air Initiative, mitigates the state's greatest contributions to consequences of the climate crisis. Transportation sector and wildfires, respectively, by investing $100 billion over the next 20 years to combat climate change. Intolerable toll on our most vulnerable communities. Communities of color suffer disproportionately from pollution. As we all know, many of low-income communities lie within transit corridors, especially here in the LA metro area, starting from Long Beach and the Bay corridor, way now out into the Inland Empire when it comes down to the Amazon distribution hubs that are popping up out there. Pollution disparities are more severe when taking into account socioeconomic status. Like we said, the cheap dirt in those low-income communities have made it a lure for these distribution hubs. LA, Long Beach, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, San Diego, Chula Vista would benefit the most from transitioning to zero emission vehicles because of the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emission and toxic air that they contribute. What Prop 30 does. Prop 30 provides an immediate sustained generational investment to transition our transportation to clean vehicles and reduce catastrophic wildfires. Before, when our beautiful forests used to be these carbon sinks that used to help clean the air, are now part of the problem and producing with extreme catastrophic wildfires are producing all this extreme toxic air particulates in the air, which are extremely damaging to several of us. It provides subsidies to low and middle income Californians to help make zero emission vehicles more affordable. One thing to say is that there is no special carve out in this. All monies generated from Proposition 30 go into state agencies, such as CARB with the zero emission vehicle rebates and subsidies. Expanding zero emission vehicle charging infrastructure will go to the CEC, another state-run department. It fights and prevents catastrophic wildfires and extreme wildfires, which will go to CAL FIRE. Those are the three main state agencies that the money goes to as a dedicated revenue source, free of the budget of California budget is to really tackle this climate crisis that we're impending on right now, if not in the middle of. Proposition 30 addresses the affordability crisis, makes EV electric vehicles more affordable for middle and low-income families. Prop 30 provides nearly 45 billion subsidies to help low and middle income communities purchase electric vehicles and zero-emission vehicles. The increased use of electric vehicles and zero-emission vehicles will help California meet our climate goals and will drive additional demand into the structure, including upgrades to the distribution grid. And please don't follow the false narratives. Charging takes place mostly at night and in the late evening when the grid is in least demand. And actually, the new battery technologies, most cars are sitting at 95% charge capacity, will now feed into the grid at peak demands. So they will actually help the grid in the long term. It uses progressive revenue source to fund these critical investments. Proposition 30 funds these critical programs with a small 1.75% increase on personal income, over 2 million, as they stated before, to ensure the funding is provided by only 35,000 of the wealthiest Californians. 1%, less than 1% of the wealthiest Californians to shoulder this burden for clean air for all Californians, especially those in low-income communities. Bringing them back also to the pre-Trump tax cuts. So it's something that they haven't lived with in the not too distant past. And it's also doesn't feed into the narrative that millionaires will flee the state. Actually, California has increased in millionaires, and we've actually seen a immigration of low-income and middle-income folks because they can't afford the housing. California is a hotbed for millionaires and creates hundreds of millionaires annually in Silicon Valley alone. Priorities for low-income communities and communities of concern. Prop 30 requires at least half the infrastructure funding to go to low-income and disadvantaged communities, ensuring that these jobs are created throughout the entire state. That's why IBEW is strongly supporting this, because it'll create several hundreds of green, middle-class, good union jobs. And also, please don't also believe the propaganda out there that there's special interest carve-outs for this. The only special interest carve-out for Proposition 30 is for low-income communities. That it guarantees that 50% of the funds for EVs, rebates and subsidies and EV infrastructures go towards low-income communities. And this is why so many, including the California Democratic Party, the AFL-CIO, IBEW, Rivian, Move LA, Cal EC, several environmental groups, labor groups, progressive partners, because climate change is a big problem that requires a big tent, and we're allowing so many here to come in and really help change climate change for the better for all Californians, not just those that can afford the most affluent communities. And that's why we've come together with a coalition of over 150 coalition partners to really combat climate change and have a dedicated income resource, a revenue source to combat this catastrophe that's imminent right now. And with that, I'll switch over to Sandra Lowe.
Yeah, just to clarify a few things. One is that this will not hurt education funding. There is no impact on education funding. I'm a former CTA staff person, school board member, and teacher, and I would not support something that hurt education. But the dirty air is hurting our kids every single day. In the month of September alone, 90,000 kids were outside of their classroom because of the air quality in 6 different counties. That is impacting their ability to learn, their ability to make friends. And right after we get through a pandemic, we immediately go into fire season, continuing pandemic impacts, and it's affecting our kids. We also have a chance to actually do the Green New Deal in California. Here we go. We've been wanting green new jobs, and here's the chance to actually do it. And these will be union jobs, because in the measure, it says specifically skilled and trained, which means union jobs. And that's why the State Building and Construction Trades Council is supporting this measure. I'm a city council member where I live, and we need this because the money goes to government agencies. It goes to schools so they can buy new buses. It goes to cities so they can put in charging stations in places where there are places like apartment buildings where people don't drive into their house and plug in their car. They need those places. I also live in a semi-rural area, so there's long distances between charging stations. We need to get into these communities in order to clear the air. And I don't really need to talk too much more about the fire. Sonoma lost 5% of the housing in 2017, increasing our homelessness population and driving people out of our county because of the fires. People couldn't find a place to live. This is for CAL FIRE, and CAL FIRE strongly supports this. I urge everyone on this call meeting today to stand with us and vote yes on Proposition 30. Thank you so much. We'll take questions, of course.
Awesome. Thank you. And,
wow. Go ahead, Oscar. Sorry.
Another thing, just to preemptively dispel any questions out there when it comes down to funding and the revenue source, in order to pass a proposition or to be competitive in the state of California to pass a ballot proposition, you have to raise anywhere between $30 to $100 million. That is serious chunk of money in order to pass progressive policy, which has only been an arena for only millionaires, corporations, and large labor unions. You know, it's a travesty to take away from the hard work of Move LA, Denny Zane, and Spur, who thought of this idea years before bringing it to lift and finding a funder who had a climate initiative to really combat climate change and really go all in on this, to really try to combat this impending catastrophe. Yeah. So, if you really look at the numbers, how are so many great nonprofits, racial equity groups, racial justice groups, environmental justice groups supposed to play an arena where they're going to bankrupt their whole staff and their whole organization in order to try to pass a ballot initiative? So that's why all these organizations, all these nonprofits came together in order to build a coalition to really move this initiative forward in a safe way in order to not bankrupt themselves. And if you look at Schools and Communities First, SEIU went all in on that. They could have won several supervisorial seats in the Inland Empire with the millions of dollars spent in Schools and Communities First, but they spent almost all their political capital that year trying to change Proposition 13. And we have to think smartly about this now. But that's all I have to say about that. Thank you so much.
And also note that the other side in the League of Women Voters slide, it said they have zero money. They don't have zero money. The other side has a lot of money, and the money is coming from anti-tax, anti-Medicare for all. David Crane governed for California. If you've been following any of his stuff, it's coming from him. It's coming from all of the billionaires, and they could say whatever they want. The bottom line is they just don't want to raise taxes. They don't want to raise taxes. They don't care what it's for. It could be for healthcare. It could be for electric vehicles. It could be for whatever. They're very happy not paying their taxes.
And thank you for correcting me on that. What I meant to say, I know that when you see those ads with Governor Brown, going against this, that there had to be some money, but we just couldn't find the amount. So I apologize.
They're very sneaky, and if you can't find it, probably other people can't either. But those ads cost a lot of money, and
yes,
they've raised over $15 million, and all the money has been coming from Northern California millionaires and billionaires.
Okay. If you have any information about that, yeah, we would appreciate that, because I know that is wrong on my slide, so I apologize.
No problem.
That's a great clarification to hear here. And it is curious to me, although you've just given me a glimpse as to why, saying it's mostly from Northern California wealth, that the governor certainly has looked at many another ballot proposition that is primarily funded by a single entity and gives them great power, presumably, over our initiative process. So it is a little weak that would be his only argument against this one. Moderator's privilege to say that. Okay, Jeannie, I'm going to take it back to you. That was Proposition 30, everyone, and I'm sure there'll be questions on that. And let's move on to Proposition 31. Jeannie.
Okay. You can see my screen. All right, Proposition 31, this is a referendum. And if you remember from your government classes, that a referendum, there was initiative, referendum, and recall, right? So a referendum is a check on laws that the legislature passes. So this is a referendum on a law that was passed in 2020 that would prohibit the retail sale of certain flavored tobacco products. This was brought up by the California Coalition for Fairness, which is a tobacco company's political action group. So this referendum was funded by the California Coalition for Fairness, which is a political action committee primarily supported by Reynolds Tobacco and Philip Morris. In 2020, SB 793 became law and was designed to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers and vaping. SB 793 did not go into effect because this referendum was filed. And once it was filed, then it was just stopped in its tracks until it could go to the ballot and to ask the voters. So Prop 31 would uphold the ban on flavored tobacco sales. Specifically, if this is passed, Prop 31 would allow that legislation, SB 793, to go into effect. Right now, it's on hold. The fiscal bottom line, last year's state's tobacco taxes raised about $2 billion. These funds are largely used for healthcare programs, including Medi-Cal, tobacco control efforts, and early childhood development. SB 793 would decrease the state tobacco tax revenues ranging from tens of millions of dollars to about $100 million annually. That difference could be depending on whether people that choose not to use the flavored tobacco, if they go to another type of tobacco product, or if they decide not to use tobacco. So it would depend on that. Nobody can predict that. So, and there would be some savings in healthcare expenses due to fewer people using tobacco products. So the supporters of this, Academy of Pediatrics, the Heart Association, Cancer Action Network, etc., and the governor. The amount raised is around, it's probably over this now, $5.5 million. Supporters say a yes on 31 protects kids by ending the sale of candy-flavored tobacco, including e-cigarettes and minty menthol cigarettes. 80% of kids who've used tobacco started with a flavored tobacco product. A yes on this on 31 would save lives and save taxpayers money by preventing tobacco-related healthcare expenses. The opposition includes a former director of California Department of Finance, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, California Taxpayers Protection Committee. And so there I have raised in opposition over $21 million. The opponents say Prop 31 is adult prohibition. It's already illegal to sell any tobacco product, including vapes, to anyone under 21. So they say that it costs taxpayers $1 billion over 4 years, while criminal gangs benefit by controlling increased smuggling and underground markets, leading to more neighborhood crime. Prohibition never works. So Prop 31, a yes on this means you support the legislation that prohibits stores and vending machines from selling most flavored tobacco products and enhancers. A no vote means you wish to repeal that legislation and believe stores and vending machines should be able to sell those flavored tobacco products. Back to Mimi. And I'll stop my share.
Jeannie, thank you very much for that. All right. Aida Castaneda, I believe, yes, Aida Castaneda, Latino Outreach Coordinator for the Yes on Prop 31 campaign. So they know how they feel about this. And I can't wait to hear from Aida. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mimi. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen here so you guys can see my PowerPoint. Give me one quick second. All righty, can you all see that? Okay, thank you again. So yes, this is a yes on Proposition 31 campaign. Thank you all for the opportunity to join you here today. So we really do have a big problem, right? We know that big tobacco is hooking kids with candy flavored tobacco. They do it quite deliberately and unapologetically, especially with the specific flavors that are used. Kids are misled into thinking that their candy flavored cigarettes are harmless and harmful. They are less harmful, than traditional cigarettes. Each year, 6,800 California kids become new daily smokers, and 4 out of 5 kids who have used tobacco started with the flavored product. In a 2020 National Youth Tobacco Survey found that 83% of youth e-cigarette users use flavored e-cigarettes, and 20% had increased since 2019. We know that we have developed a youth e-cigarette epidemic. We know that this is a long-term health to our kids. It is highly addictive. E-cigarettes deliver massive doses of high addictive nicotine. They're harmful, especially harmful to kids. Tobacco use harms adolescent brain development, which impacts attention, memory, and learning. Vape today, cigarettes tomorrow. Young people who use e-cigarettes are more likely to become smokers. A lot of our data indicates that a lot of individuals start smoking at early as 14. We also realized that the different activists within our community had developed COPD because of early detections of local tobacco retailers that have also infiltrated social justice movements. So this is one of the predatory marketing practices that big tobacco have attempted to do for many decades. But unfortunately, they have been able to innovate their strategies by hooking kids with flavored e-cigarettes. So this is really an epidemic that the U.S. Surgeon General has called to our attention, and it's imperative that we take the position on a yes vote for Prop 31. Oops. Okay. So just a little bit of history. I know that Jeannie had already covered a little bit of this, but California passed a bipartisan piece of legislation with SB 793, which ended the sale of candy flavored tobacco in the state, to which includes minty menthol cigarettes, which is the original flavored tobacco product. Big Tobacco had filed a qualified referendum on SB 793. So it's critical that when we uphold a vote on a referendum, that we know that it is a yes vote. We want to affirm, or in this case, uphold the statewide mandate to end the sale of flavored tobacco products. Another thing to note, I know folks are particularly sensitive about the use of flavored tobacco in hookah. In the state legislature, it was also exempt. So this obviously would include the same exemption of SB 793, which exempts hookah and also premium cigars. Okay, so why vote yes? Almost 90% of adult smokers started smoking by the age of 18, and the sale of flavored tobacco products will help prevent them from starting smoking. Preventing big tobacco from preying on the Black community. For 50 years, big tobacco has targeted the Black community, hooking generations on minty menthol. 85% of Black smokers use menthol, and smoking is a leading cause of death. We talked about this earlier, but saving California consumers, taxpayers, and businesses millions. We realize that in using these tobacco sales tax, we want to be sure to also support our local organizations that are combating early on detection of folks being hooked to these particular products. Any tobacco-related healthcare costs total approximately $13.3 billion. Upholding California's flavored tobacco law would result in about 800 million annual healthcare cost savings. So whatever money is taken out from flavored tobacco sales tax will be really protecting our youth with this particular proposition. And this is our coalition. We have a wide variety of organizations that have taken the lead on this effort. The majority of our support, of course, come from the National Campaign on Tobacco Free Kids, their PAC, their action fund. We had ACS CAN, we have, of course, Kaiser, we have LULAC. We have a host of organizations that have taken a position on this ballot measure because they recognize what's really at play here. And it really is a tobacco industry that has quite literally targeted our Black and brown youth, especially when we recognize that a lot of these retailers are within poor Black and low-income communities within the county, and all throughout the counties throughout California. So it's critical that we came together as a coalition to make sure that we send a message to big tobacco that we've had enough, and that our kids by far come first before their greed and a lot of their interest in continuing to collect that money. Okay, we also know that out-of-state money is coming into this particular effort. Big Tobacco has spent over $20 million to qualify this referendum that delayed SB 793 being implemented nearly 2 years ago. Companies are funding junk science studies, buying out medical journals, and we know that they're going to deliberately mislead the public on what this means. So I really thank you for hosting this platform so people are better equipped to understand what Big Tobacco is going to do to confuse the populace in California to vote in their favor. So it's important that we are educated and understand what a yes vote really means, and we want to be sure to uphold the legislature by their bipartisan efforts to stop Big Tobacco in their tracks. And thank you so much. That really concludes the presentation. I'll be sure to leave a website in the chat box. And thank you again for the opportunity to present to this forum. Thank you.
Yeah. Aida, thank you so much. I neglected to say that you're also the chair of the CDP Native American Caucus. Oh, no, that's Marianne coming up. I'm very sorry. Latino outreach. You've got enough on your plate. Thank you very much. And that was great. Thank you very much. So Big Tobacco. All right. Not really much of a surprise. Jeannie, I'm going to throw it back to you. And we're now coming up, and Marianne will be coming up to advocate for that. She's the chair of the CDP Native American Caucus. I got confused looking at my paper. I'm listening to Aida and thinking I was missing something down here. We are now going to learn about Proposition 26. There are two similar ones, but we've asked Jeannie to present on Prop 26 and then have Marianne answer that. And then when Jeannie presents on Proposition 27, part of that presentation from Jeannie will have a side-by-side comparison of the two propositions. But right now, we're only talking about Proposition 26. Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you. And I wanted to add to what they were saying is I'm afraid that there's going to be confusion over the Prop 31. It was similar to what happened with the same-sex marriage thing. People are going to say, oh, Prop 31, that has to do with the flavored cigarettes. And they'll want to vote no, because they're thinking no on flavored cigarettes rather than yes to pass the legislation. So be sure when you talk to other people, be sure to explain what a yes means or what a no means on that one. Okay. All right. I will now go into Prop 26, which allows in-person roulette, dice games, and sports wagering on tribal lands. This was an initiative. This is a constitutional amendment and statute, and it was forwarded by a coalition of tribes. So the California Constitution and state law limit gambling in California, and the state law bans sports betting, roulette, and games with dice, but it does allow the state lottery, card rooms, horse race betting, and tribal casinos. And California currently has compacts with 79 tribes. This has to be a constitutional amendment because it would change the California Constitution. The casinos do allow slot machines, lottery games, and card games, but right now, no roulette, dice games, or sports wagering. So Prop 26 would allow in-person roulette, dice games, and sports wagering on tribal lands and 4 racetracks. If you notice the map on the left, those of us in San Diego County have been getting inundated with this. I don't know how much it is the rest of the state, but you can see that there are a lot more dots in San Diego County because we have one of the 4 racetracks along with a lot of tribal casinos. So the fiscal bottom line is it's unknown. It depends on how many people want to get involved in sports betting and roulette, etc. So it will increase state revenues, possibly reaching the tens of millions of dollars annually. And that would come from racetracks and the tribal casino sports betting payments and gambling penalties. Some of these would be a shift from existing state revenues. So the signers are basically the big tribes that have casinos now. And then there's a lieutenant governor and a California state treasurer. The current amount raised in support is over 73 million to support this. The supporters say yes on 26 authorizes sports wagering in person at tribal casinos. It limits sports wagering to adults only. Keep in mind, there are some casinos that do consider an adult an 18-year-old, not a 21-year-old. Prop 26 supports Indian self-reliance by providing revenue for tribal education, healthcare, and other vital services. It promotes safe, responsible gaming, and helps prevent illegal gambling. The opponents, the signers of these, are National Veterans Foundation, the Senior Advocates League, American Federation of Municipal Employees, and various other groups, Black American Political Association. There is current amount raised in opposition is over 42 million. The opponents say Prop 26 is a massive expansion of gambling that will lead to more underage gambling and addiction. Prop 26 is sponsored by 5 wealthy gaming tribes who want to expand their monopoly on gambling to include sports betting. At the same time, Prop 26 will devastate other communities of color. So a yes on 26, tribal casinos and racetracks, 4 racetracks, could offer in-person sports betting, and casinos could expand other gaming options. There are new ways to seek enforcement of certain state gambling laws. A no vote would mean that sports betting would continue to be illegal in California, and tribal casinos would continue to be unable to offer roulette and games with dice. And so back to Mimi.
Okay.
Stop share.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. I'm from show business where I overhear a lot of sports betting. Yeah.
Because it's legal in about 35 states right now.
Oh, so they're doing elsewhere. Okay. Well, very good, because we're going to hear Marianne Andreas, the chair of the California Democratic Native American Caucus. I'm so glad you're with us. And you're going to be discussing, if you would, Marianne, do you want to keep it to 26? I know you're also going to talk to us about 27, but I had said, because my confusion is often, do I do both? Do I do both as a yes, both as a no? Do I split? So if you would just talk about 26 right now, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Marianne. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank everybody. Mimi, Mike, my friend Nathan Kemp, who actually was the invitee. I'm happy to be here today. The issue is getting a lot of growing attention and a lot of confusion, as people say. The thing about separating the two is they're kind of intermingled. They tie into each other in certain ways. They're supposed to be complementary, but they have big problems. Yes, Prop 26 is brick and mortar. The tribes would like to keep it within the brick and mortar casinos instead of the cell phone, the iPad, the computer, and the racetracks. They're including 4 racetracks, which has created some dissension among the rest of the tribes. They would rather not see the racetracks in there. Dice, roulette, as you said, all of that is in there, and the 5 tribes are funding this. And for both of them, regulation is uncertain, taxes are uncertain. They all have variables, but and you know, we have looked at it in Indian country as sort of a train coming down the tracks because 35 states, as you say, have this currently, and it's come to California, and we're going to have to deal with it. And that's, I think this is the start of it. We've been doing polling since the first of the year, actually since last year, at 25 polls, 25,000 Californians. And it doesn't look like either one of these is going to make the threshold of 51. They're currently polling no 64, 18 yes, 18 undecided. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't look good for either. $500,000 has been spent, which is historical. $100,000 on 27 in the last 2 months, and they only moved the needle downward in terms of polling. Same with 26. They're just so tied together. There really is no confusion. If I could just speak to 27, there's absolutely no confusion on 27. These are the corporate platform owners, and they're based out of state, New York, Las Vegas, Boston. So, and it's not really a lot of jobs to be created. And the profits will go out of state to New York, Boston, and Las Vegas. And they're set up to create a monopoly among themselves, the platform, the corporate platform. In order to participate, you have to pay $100 million. You have to have 6 casinos. You have to have like 13 years of experience. They're so hard for other corporations, California corporations, to be involved so that they can create this monopoly. If at some point, say 2024, we do move forward with online gaming, and we will need the platform guys. We want them as a vendor, not as a powerful monopoly who's going to run the tribes and the state of California and everything else. So in their proper place, yes. In this format, no. You know, that I just think that there should be absolutely no confusion about 27. It's no on 27. You know, and despite the hundreds of dollars that they're in flooding the airwaves, radio, billboards, digital ads, social media, they're just not doing anything. They talk about homelessness, but homelessness is what is called a sweetener. They know that California people are concerned about homelessness, so they put this in there. We're going to address homelessness. They've done the same thing in others, the 35 states that they've been in, and they have not kept up with the projections that they made. It promised if they were passed and if they were able to do online sports gaming in other states. They haven't kept up with those promises. We are supported on the no on 27 by Communication Workers of America, California Teachers Association, NAACP, and labor icon Dolores Huerta. The out-of-state corporations have made it clear that this measure would be a first step to full online gaming in California, which would decimate the tribes. Today's California tribes provide almost 200,000 jobs, 23.2 billion in economic activity, and 4.5 billion in tax revenues to the state. Prop 27 would not provide any new jobs for California. Instead, the out-of-state card rooms corporations would take 90% of the profits with them to Brooklyn, Boston, and Las Vegas, as I said earlier. The overwhelming majority of California's 100 plus Native American tribes strongly oppose Prop 27, and we are asking you to stand with us. Just let there be no confusion, no on 27. 26 is, has the same polling numbers, doesn't look like it's going to make it. It's got its own problems, got a few loopholes that don't exactly kill it, but I mean, it's hard to support. So everybody is neutral on 26 and no on 27. I hope that answers questions.
Thank you. That answered a lot of my questions. I wanted to know, are both Prop 26 and Prop 27 being sweetened with the homelessness thing? Because that's
No.
all I hear.
No,
26
All I
is
hear in
not.
the ads are gamble and help the homeless. That's all
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But
26
not,
But you're probably, all you're seeing is 27.
all I'm
It's
seeing
like
is 27.
26 has pretty much thrown in the towel. They're not funding a
Okay.
audio campaign, video, news.
And 26
billboard.
never had the sweetener
No,
that
No.
what we're going to do. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
that's all 27.
Okay. Good. Thank you
And you
very,
never see
very
the
much.
corporate.
and
based
I'll go
only-
through that when I compare them.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. That is that okay with you, Marianne? That was really
Yes.
clear. Shall we go on to Jeannie's presentation then
Yeah.
of 27 to include this? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Marianne has already explained some of this, but 27 allows online and mobile sports wagering outside of tribal lands. It too is a constitutional amendment. It was brought up by the Californians for Solutions to Homelessness and Mental Health Support is the action campaign's name. So how it got on the ballot, in 2018, the US Supreme Court decision struck down the federal law that bans sports betting in all states but Nevada. So since then, approximately 35 states have legalized such betting in one form or another. 27 allows tribes or gambling companies to offer online sports betting. And as Mary Ann was saying, tribes can do it if they pay $100 million to get into it. But these corporations would be controlling it. So some of the proceeds would go to
No,
combat
corporations
homelessness.
would pay $100 million. Tribes would pay 10 million.
Oh, thank you. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. So the fiscal bottom line is Prop 27 would impact both state, local, and local revenues and costs, because there are card rooms that are existing now, and they think that if this online betting goes on, that a lot of these card rooms would close down. 10% of sports bets. So the way this money would go, of all the sports betting, 10% of it would go into a state fund, and that state fund would first pay out all the prize payments, the federal taxes, and any promotional offers that they offer. After that money is taken away from the 10%, then 85% of that money would go into homelessness and 15% to other tribes. So when they say 85%, it's not 85% of the whole thing, it's 85% of the 10%.
Yes.
Then that other 90% would go into the corporation's profits. Money spent on gambling would no longer be spent on other things, which would likely result in a loss of sales taxes. So for instance, if I go and spend $200 on sports betting online, then I don't have $200 to go and go out to lunch or dinner or something like that. So anyway, so the signers of the support are the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, the Ranchera Poma Indians of California, some mental health nonprofit leader, etc. Major League Baseball, I do not know why that's in there, and so the current amount raised in support is over $100 million
Right.
raised in support. And the supporters say Prop 27 is supported by California tribes and homelessness and mental health experts. For the first time, it would permanently fund housing, mental health, and addiction treatment by regulating and taxing online sports betting, and it would contain strict rules protecting minors. The opposition, again, a lot of the tribal Indians would be that, and this is unusual. Both the California Democratic Party and the California Republican Party, strange bedfellows indeed, are against this. The current amount raised in opposition is over $114 million. The opponents say it's a deceptive scheme funded by out-of-state gambling corporations to legalize a massive expansion of online and mobile sports gambling, including, by the way, that this award shows like the Academy Awards, Emmys, all these sort of things would be part of the sports gambling and video game competitions. So Prop 27 is not a solution to homelessness. 90% of the profits would go to out-of-state corporations. And it's opposed by more than 50 California tribes. So a yes on 27 would mean that licensed tribes or gambling companies could offer online sports betting over the internet and mobile devices to people 21 and older on non-tribal lands in California. Some of the revenue would support small tribes and alleviate homelessness. A no vote is sports betting would continue to be illegal in California. No changes would be made to the state gambling laws. So what's the difference? Prop 26, the sports betting can happen in person only in casinos and 4 racetracks. It would allow for roulette, craps, and other dice games in those casinos, and it's largely backed by Native American tribes. Prop 27 legalizes sports betting online. It allows out-of-state gaming companies to partner with Native American tribes who may not have casinos, and some revenue may go to alleviating homelessness. Keep in mind, you can vote. Sometimes this is presented like you have to choose one or the other. You can vote yes on both, you can vote no on both, or you can vote yes on one and no on the other. So back to Mimi.
Jeannie, thank you so much. This is great. We have half an hour for question and answer, and I'm going to throw that over to Mike, because I think he is more equipped to take the questions and unmute the people who are answering. Am I wrong about that, Mike?
I don't think you're wrong.
Okay, here's the thing.
I haven't given it much thought.
What we are going to do, and I promised Mike I would do this, it is going to be 1 minute. When you get unmuted, you'll have a minute. So we know, I always do it, making comments and saying the stuff we want filled in. But make sure you get your question. If you want information from one of the speakers, make sure you get that in before a minute is up. And I'll be here going like this time because it's only 1 minute.
Okay, so we're going to start the Q&A session momentarily, and I recommend that if you have a question, you put your hand up now, and we'll take those questions in the order in which your hand went up. A little bit into the Q&A session, we will put the poll up on the screen. If you're on a computer, you'll see the poll pop up, and it'll be kind of annoying because it's hard to get it out of the way. But once you vote, it'll clear. If you're on a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad, you may have to look for it, but it's there. Unfortunately, because we have 161 participants at the moment, that's the only real practical way to do it, is to use the Zoom poll. If you are on a dial-up phone, I'm sorry, Zoom polling doesn't work with that, but we'll be thinking about you. So the first person who has a question is Danette Abbott Wicker.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I had kind of a side comment regarding Proposition 30. We've been fighting and sending out blasts, PDA, to make sure Newsom vetoed SB 884. Unfortunately, he signed it the other day. Not good, because it's going to jeopardize California climate goals by making electricity too costly. He basically handed $70 to $100 billion to PG&E on top of the other billions they've already gotten for undergrounding their wires, when Edison has had great success with triple wrapping their wires and insulating them. This is in addition to PG&E getting off criminally for the fires they started a couple of years ago up in Northern California.
Danette, could you put that in the form of a question?
Yeah, my question is, how are we going to, I would love to see this pass, obviously, but it's only a small portion of where we need to get in terms of climate goals, green energy. What do you suggest? I know other than getting him out of office and getting someone more progressive in, how do we convince these people in power that we're running out of time? We have literally 4 years to stop the global temperature increase, or we're going to be in a whole world of trouble.
Do you
more
do
than
it
we are
direct, Jeanette, you want to direct that to anybody in particular?
Whoever covered Proposition 30, I don't know
Okay.
if they know about those
Great.
propositions, but they all go hand in hand.
Okay,
At this
that,
point?
yeah, that's okay. We know that would be Oscar. No, yeah, to Oscar. Garcia, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you,
Awesome.
Jeanette. Well, what you can, obviously, it isn't enough. And that's exactly why we're trying to pass Proposition 30, because it is a small portion of the puzzle that we need to solve this climate crisis. We have to keep on holding our legislators accountable. We have to keep on attending meetings like this, clarifying the misinformation, so that good propositions and good policy like Proposition 30 don't get misinformed and caught up with the millionaires' propaganda to try to eliminate climate change and make it a delayer rather than a denying phase. Because as we all know, delaying is worse than denying when it comes down to climate change at this moment. So we have to do all we can and just be active, go back on social media and dispel misinformation.
I think that's right. And just be aware that, the governor did put in some good climate first steps, but he's relying on budget surplus, which we know next year we're not going to have.
Exactly.
So we really need sustainable funding so we can say, thank you for getting us this far, but we've got to have 20 years of sustainable, ongoing funding that we know we can count on. And only Prop 30 gives you that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay,
Mike?
Jeffrey T, as opposed to Jeffrey B, is up next. Jeffrey B is up after Jeffrey T. So Jeffrey, please start.
Okay. I thank you for everything that I'm hearing here today, and I'm hoping that you made it clear what we want to be voting yes on and what we want to be voting no on. My concern is here in Sacramento is local initiative O. I hope there's not other cities that have local initiatives that are as dynamic and may have the impact that Measure O has for homeless. It's not something you guys can address, but it is something that is happening, and I'm hoping there's others that are having local things that are happening within the cities of local ballot measures that can be somewhere be noted. That's my comment. Not really a question, but affirming what you have done already.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And you got it in under minutes, so fabulous. It's a great comment. Okay, what, Mike?
Okay, and since that wasn't a question, we'll go right to Jeffrey B.
All right, I got two real quick. I know I got some answer, but I want to make sure. I want to just affirm just in case. But for prop, first off, what should I vote on Prop 26 and 27? How should I vote on that first off? And secondly, I know this question was answered, but I'm going to ask anyway, just in case. Does Prop 30 increase taxes on the rich to help fund to get us to zero emissions and stuff?
Okay. I think maybe Mary Ann, do you want to take the first question, or do you,
Yes,
know?
I will. No on 26, no on 27.
And
Of course, that's your opinion, Mary. Other
Right.
people may come up, make their
Yeah.
own minds up.
Yeah, but that's an answer for you from the person who presented. Again, it's her opinion, but she's here discussing that. And the second question about whether 30, Oscar, was that? Yeah, it's about whether it raises money on the wealthy to help the environment.
Yes, it only taxes the 1%, the 35,000 Californians in a state full of close to 40 million that can afford it most. As the math breaks down, I think they said it earlier, Ms. Brown, in which it's around 6 cents for every dollar over $2 million. So these are people that are living in an extreme tax bracket in which $1,000 is like a $10 bill for them. So it's really a drop in the bucket. And like I said, it brings it back to the pre-Trump tax cuts. So it's please don't believe the hype when they say that we're going to be losing millionaires in the state. We're losing low income and middle income people, good, hardworking folks that can't afford to live in this state because they're burdened by lack of infrastructure for charging stations to transition to clean transportation, because they can't. Over the lifetime of a vehicle, electric vehicle, you save over $10,000, not only in the maintenance and the preservation of the electric vehicle, but also the annual cost savings when it comes down to gas. We have to do that transition. We have to do it now, especially in our low-income communities.
And it's all new money, so it will not harm anything that's currently in the budget, won't cut anything in the budget, creates its own new funding source.
All right, let's not.
Millionaires.
All right, and let's not forget about the poll we're going to be doing. Isn't that right, Mike?
I will put it up momentarily.
Alrighty.
Let's go to the next question, Mike.
That would be Cynthia Hart.
Hi, I'm wondering about Prop 28. Is there a level of effort requirement built into this that would guarantee that every school actually does increase their total amount of arts and music funding in their budgets? I was just my concern is, you know, if a school's already spending, a school district is spending $100,000 a year in arts and music, and then they get another 20,000, they're like, oh goody, we can repurpose this money we were already spending on arts and music and spend it on the football team. But they still the following year spend only $100,000. They didn't increase it to 120,000. Say, is there a level of effort requirement that would prevent that kind of displacement of the funding?
Who wants to answer that? Do we still have, is it Ann Crosby, are you still with us? She did speak about they're in support. I don't know there. I remember some talk of accountability.
She's unmuted.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Okay, good.
I apologize.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm distracted by the poll that's just popped up.
The question was about.
Yes, it's how can you make sure that a school that's getting extra funding does not repurpose what they already had been spending on their arts programs, and now they say we don't need to spend our own money on the arts programs, take away the money from the arts programs they've been doing and repurpose it for something else, rather than accepting the new state money for arts funding to supplement what they've already been doing. I believe is there any mechanism to ensure that doesn't happen? Is that, I think.
Okay, I think that so the challenge is that schools are underfunded, period. So if they've been doing something with funds to fund arts education and then turn around and spend that money somewhere else, that's fine. The purpose is to make sure that they have arts education. So if that means they have additional funding, well, some districts are always going to have additional funding just because they can afford to do that. So the question is, are we able to get schools that do not have any funding for these programs to a place where they have it? So I hope that answers the question.
Can I add to that one of the problems that they worry about is having enough teachers who could actually fill that. So when the school's district gets the money, will there be teachers? They're already having trouble finding enough teachers for the other courses and, you know, in elementary school and so on, but finding enough people who could teach that. And that's maybe a difficulty.
Can I address that?
Sure.
I think that absolutely being able to find enough teachers, period, right now is very difficult. But if you don't have the programs, those people who could be going into arts education won't be doing it because there's no positions available, because those positions have evaporated as funding dropped and educational positions went away. But with this, it's more likely to bring it back if there's funding. So it may take them time, and just like any program, a science teacher, math teacher, English teacher, there are things in place that allows school districts to actually say they're in an emergency position and they need to temporarily fill the position. And I would imagine it'll be the same with arts education, but there are only temporary fixes while we get up to speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's still 8 participants with raised hands. I just wanted to note that I just went in and tried to do something with the poll, and it says only 3 people have voted and the polling is closed. So Mike, you might be working that out.
I am, and as soon as I figure it out,
I don't
I'll
think
bring
the
it back
hosts
up.
can, I don't think hosts.
Oh, the
can
hosts
vote.
can't vote. Well, that's
No.
probably
that's
not
democracy
fair.
there. All right, let's go on to the next question so we can maybe get them all in. We got 15 more minutes. Mike, do you have that list of the people?
I'll jump in since Mike's busy taking care of the poll. My name's
Yeah.
Dave. Okay, and David Mandel, you're next up. Please unmute yourself and come on in. 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this. 2 quick questions, one about 30 and one about 26 and 27. 30 sounds good, but I just wonder why the originators that didn't, instead of extra income tax on the top income earners, have a wealth tax, because as we've learned a lot lately, many super rich people either hide their income completely or in large part, so they would not be subject to it. So it seems like wealth tax of one sort or another, and there are lots of possibilities, would have been better, and I hope that that will happen in the future. I'd like to know why they didn't do it now. And 26 and 27, yeah, it seems that, these are 2 competing things sponsored by corporations to see who can extract the most income from low-income people, and I totally concur that we should be against both of them. But the question is there a more progressive way to have online or sports gambling in some form? Because it seems inevitable that it's going to happen, or people do it out of state anyway online. Is there some way to do it in a progressive way that will actually really help all the tribes and not just some of them, and that will actually serve the public as well with serious money, in addition to taking money away from low-income people? Thanks.
There's a 3rd proposition in the hopper. It didn't get its signatures in time. We're hoping to press the reset button and head for 2024 with input from as many tribes as we can get, and get rid of some of the debris, the unwanted that in the first, and put the corporations where they should be as vendors and not as a huge monopoly, a powerful monopoly running the tribes and running the state. Yeah, that's the hope.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I can answer for 30 when it comes down to, I really can't speak for the genesis of exactly why they chose the personal income tax over 2 million. I can only assume that it's the cleanest, most transparent way in order to pass a progressive wealth tax. And also when you're passing a balloted initiative, messaging is key. So if you're going to do it on a windfall tax, on a wealth windfall tax, it becomes a bit convoluted as well. And I also, I don't know exactly the monies, but I doubt it wouldn't create as much of a steady revenue source as a personal income tax over 2 million, especially when looking at the Board of Equalization's numbers and the Franchise Tax Board numbers when it comes down to personal income tax returns in the state.
The poll is back up. We have people voting now. 22 people have voted so far.
How do you vote? It's not working for me. I don't even see.
Well, no, you're a co-host, so it does
Oh,
not.
sorry, been told.
That is by design.
Let us
But
continue.
if you voted the first time around, and there weren't very many of you, but if you did, please try again.
We have
It should be up on your screen.
We have 40 votes so far.
All right. Who else has a question?
Dr. Sharon Alexander, would you please ask your question? Unmute yourself.
Trying. I'm also trying start my video, but okay, whoops, went off again. Here we go. Yeah, my question is about Prop 30. And well, I love that comment about why not a wealth tax. That was smart, typical that we aren't being smart. And my question is, yeah, I love taxing the higher income payers, but they're squirrely and they have this tendency of passing on their taxes to consumers. And is there anything that's going to stop them from passing on their tax requirements to people lower down on the totem pole?
I think at the moment we're currently, with the gas prices being what they are and with the inflation, we're currently at the whim of Korean corporations and millionaires. And if we can't find ways around that, the governor can't even do it. He's proposing a lot of nice things, but he's definitely not doing it either. So, you know, when we're talking about fair and equity and the puzzle piece that's missing towards the governor's executive order towards transitioning towards clean transportation for all, we don't see another way without Proposition 30 by getting there. You know, I understand your frustrations with it, but you know, this is a good, clean first start and a dedicated revenue source for that transition to clean transportation. Sandra, do you want to add?
I would just say that, you know, the Billionaire Boys Club that's putting all the money against it certainly thinks that we're taxing the all super rich, because the super rich are all trying to stop it. So you may not think so, but they think so. And so I think we've absolutely hit the mark in terms of who we have to go after. Now we just have to make sure that we get our word out to everyone else to make sure that they understand the importance of the measure.
And also vis-a-vis with the counter argument, you know, I think Reaganomics has been proven false a long time ago as well.
Okay, we're at 5:51 now. So last question, and we're going to give this to Anita, and then we're going to wrap up our program. So Anita Wojcicki, would you please unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I'm a little bit confused about Proposition 26. It says it gives it to the tribes, but I heard the representative say vote no on 26 and 27. So just please clarify 26 for me. And secondly, I'd like to talk about Prop 29, which is the dialysis. I'm a little confused because we've got two powerful sides opposing each other. So how are dialysis patients currently protected? And does anybody know the percentage of patients who have been harmed in the current way they do things? Thank you. Did you all hear me?
Yes. Yeah, Marianne, do you want to? Yeah, there you are. Hi.
Okay, she asked about, what was it on 26?
She said it was supposed to go to the tribes. So, but somehow you have said vote no anyway. What is that distinction? It should be going to
the some money that was supposed to go to the tribes, the non-gaming tribes, I believe, that currently in tribal compacts we have money set aside for tribes that are considered non-gaming. Those are tribes that can have 300 or under slots, and so we provide money for them every year, and I guess Pachungas would do that as well. But the big grab among tribes for the 26 is the racetracks. If 27 passes, it's going to cost $10 million for small tribes who don't have much, no gaming. Where are they going to come up with 10 million to get?
That's for 27, but I think the question, Marianne, is on 26, the confusion of saying, well, it helps the tribal casinos legalize sports betting at tribal casinos. We know it's not the out-of-state corporations like on 27.
Right. We do that currently. I guess this would add a little a little more to that, what we currently do.
But you said the regulation's uncertain on that, right? So it's,
The in 26, I don't think it would be uncertain. I
so
think
what's the reason for the no? If there's a reason we can say,
Partially because 26 is being funded by the 5 big casinos and won't benefit anybody else.
okay, I think that's the answer that the person might have been.
If it passes, other tribes will be able to take part in the online sports gaming as well. You know, the
No, 26, she's talking.
corporate,
26.
yes, if 26 passes, other tribes will be able to participate in this online sports gaming as well.
But isn't it a brick mortar? You said this was the brick and mortar one where the tribes can have sports betting and so can the racetracks.
In person inside a tribal casino. As
Okay,
opposed to,
so why are we voting no on that if we thought that might be a good idea?
there are several other problems, regulation in tax, uncertain taxes in there, and the race. I said that the rest of the tribes are not in the coalition because they oppose the racetracks being.
They oppose the racetracks. Okay, yep. Very clear. And now the other question.
Small tribes can't pay the money to get in.
Okay, the other question was about the dialysis, and I'm interested in that too. I believe Prop 29, I do remember Nurse Judy and Bill said that they send problems to the emergency room and then it becomes part of the hospital statistic and it conveniently stays out of the dialysis clinic statistic. That's all I remember about that. But would any, Dr. Bill or Nurse Judy, do you want to, the specifics of that question was, what are the statistics now on who's been hurt? And what was the first part of that question again?
The other part was what kind of protection do patients currently have?
Currently exist. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a terrific question. Thank you, Anita. I don't know the statistics on how many people have been harmed. And if there's a public health drive to reform the system per se. But when you consider the protection of patients has to go through the usual kind of governmental bodies, meaning medical quality board for the state and or the legal system, meaning through malpractice. What I think Judy and I both said at the beginning was that this is a complicated procedure, and should it have the same status as a regular office or clinic visit in that regard, or does this require a higher level of professional supervision, as would be the case with a doctor, nurse, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner? So I think that we're talking about a higher level of quality of care and protection in that way.
The other provision is that they have to do more reporting to the state. Right now, they don't. They can send it off to the federal and get it lost in federal bureaucracy. And as I understand it, there is no prohibition about DaVita or any of the other ones closing a facility.
Wow.
They can do it at their own whim. It's a private property. It's a proprietary thing. They don't have to. With this bill, they have to prove to the state there's a reason for it to close.
Another reason for Medicare for all. Hey.
Wow. Okay, great. Mike, I think it is now we're coming to 2 minutes. This has been amazing. I'm so sorry to see hands still up, and but Mike, I'm going to throw it back to you. I want to personally thank Jeannie because it was a fantastic presentation, and all of our people who advocated and came and stayed. Fantastic. I have clarified a lot of my thinking with this. Thank you. It's what it was meant to do.
Good. Okay, I also would like to thank everybody, and I'll do it more or less in person. If you are a host or co-host and couldn't vote, could you shoot me an email how you would vote and let me know that you sent it. And when we send out the blast, probably late tomorrow or maybe early Tuesday, it will include the results of the poll. It will also include how to get to the recording of this meeting. But you do have to be a PDA member, as has been described in the chat, in order to get those results. But if let me ask 3 times, has everyone who wishes to vote voted? There's still about 20 people based on who's on. There's still about 20 people who haven't voted yet. Well, keep in mind the numbers. Well, I guess that's true. It doesn't count. But if people don't want to vote, that's their issue. If they can't find it on their smartphone, there's nothing much we can do about it on short term. So this is the absolute last call. Has everyone who wishes to vote voted? Go ahead, let me lower your hands. Well, I will lower your hands. If you still need to vote and can, would you raise your hand? So raise your hand if you wish to vote but haven't and found that you could. Okay, on that note, I will share the poll with everybody. Here are the results, and you can go through them, but we'll just say really quick. Prop 1 is not from this group is 99% yes. Prop 1, of course, being the right to reproductive decisions. Prop 2 is, Prop 26 we just discussed, allows tribes to operate roulette. We got 15% yes and 78% no, which is interesting, I think. Prop 27, we got 99% no, and somebody didn't vote. So that really is 100% as far as the statistics go, because abstains just don't count. We just want to know if anybody still was out on it, so to speak. Prop 28, arts and music education, is 97% yes, and we got 2 abstentions and 1 no. Prop 29, to require on-site medical professionals at dialysis clinics, is 71% yes, and 18% no and 12% are not going to vote on it or haven't decided yet. Prop 30 is 91% yes, 6% no, and 3 people decided not to vote for it. Prohibit flavored tobacco products is 96% yes, 3% no, and 1 abstention. As I said, if you are a member of PDA/PDA-CA, and if you aren't a member, go to pdamerica.org, click on join, enter your data, do it today, and you will get the response tomorrow. If you are not a Californian, you still won't get a response, because this is a PDA-CA event, and only California members of PDA and PDA-CA are on our mail list. So on that note, if you have a question, I'll give you a few more minutes to put it in the chat to Nathan, and we will try to get an answer back to you. So thanks, everyone.